Good afternoon, and thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you to our Mayor, Patrick Brown, for setting the stage for this conversation. As you heard, this panel is about moving clean, the new era of greener public transportation, and I'm really pleased to be here this afternoon. My name is Claire Barnett. I'm the Director of Economic Development with the City of Brampton, and we're thrilled to share some of our story with you, and certainly I'm very proud to be representing one of the fastest growing and youngest, most dynamic cities in the country. Before introducing our panelists today, I just wanted to set the stage for our discussion this afternoon. The vast majority of the worldwide population lives in ever-growing cities and urban areas, which makes moving a key feature in our existence, and access to efficient and environmentally friendly public transportation not a luxury but a necessity. You heard examples from our mayor about how our city is implementing several initiatives in an effort to make our transportation system greener. Today, we will explore the electrification of mobility ecosystems, how we can transform and adapt our cities towards greener public transportation. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the International Economic Forum of Americas for taking on this hybrid makeup this afternoon. I think they've done a wonderful job with the whole conference, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. So I'll introduce our panel for you. In person with us today is Sankar Dasgupta, who is the co-founder and CEO of Electrovaya. Sankar is an entrepreneur, an award-winning scientist with over 50 US patents, who is passionate on the urgency to reduce the effects of climate change. He has participated in a number of committees, including the White House Committee on Energy and the Environment, chaired by then Vice President Al Gore. Recently, he was an advisor to the Indian Prime Minister on climate change and energy transformation. A founding charter member of TIE Toronto, he is frequently invited to be a speaker at conferences and universities worldwide. Sankar received his doctorate from Imperial College London and is a graduate of Presidency College in Calcutta. He serves as an adjunct professor at the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Toronto. And on the screen, we have David Scory, who is the president and CEO of Keolis North America. David began his career in transportation as an apprentice mechanical engineer, moving up to a variety of managerial and executive positions in the industry for British Rail, Intercity West Coast, Virgin Trains, and Alstom before joining Southern Railway in 2004. In the fall of 2016, David took over as general manager of Keolis Commuter Systems in Boston. At KCS in Boston, he led the operation and maintenance of the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority's commuter rail system, which carries more than 127,000 passengers daily through the greater Boston area. Under his leadership, KCS, the commuter rail, surpassed its 10th year average for on-time performance by 2% and increased revenue and ridership. In 2021, David was appointed CEO of Keolis North America, overseeing all operations in US and Canada. And we have on the screen Rich Moore, who is Global Vice President of Fleet Solutions for ChargePoint. Rick brings more than 25 years of fleet production and product technology experience to his role at ChargePoint. In his career at Ryder Systems, Rich led the global rental product, which oversaw tens of thousands of vehicles and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue prior to becoming Chief Technology Officer and VP of New Products for the company's Fleet Management Solutions division. There he led the development and launch of Coop.com, the transportation industry's first asset-sharing platform, as well as lead products in the areas of fleet management, telematics, connected fleet solutions, and advanced vehicle technology products. Rich received his Bachelor of Business Administration from Charter Oak University and MBA from Kennesaw State University, and he also serves as chairman of the board at Workforce Georgia. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and thank you to our audience for joining us this afternoon. Sankar, I'd like to start with you about what you think this panel needs to speak about in terms of the evolution and what stage we're at with the evolution of technology behind the electrification of public transportation.
Yes, and thanks, Claire. We are in a delightful stage that finally the market has opened up and a tsunami is coming in for public transportation and so on. Electrovaya, as you mentioned, we've been like a evangelist and really we were making batteries for Daimler in 2015, and so on, and then before that with GM, with Chryslers and so on. But really the market wasn't there. And so I'm really delighted to see the market coming in. Now, on the technology front, we are a technology bunch. So what we did was we produced a battery, especially for the public transportation, a battery which I believe has the highest safety. And you've seen a lot of press on safety on lithium-ion batteries. Recently, two major OEMs did a pullback, recalled their batteries because there were a lot of fires and so on. And in passenger cars, I hate to say this, if there's something bad, you can jump out. In a bus, etc., it's harder for that 20, 30 people to go out. So we see a great amount of technology coming that side. And of course, which we are and others are, we are doing a lot of interesting work on solid-state batteries, which will make this transportation technology much, much lower cost than the present-day gasoline technology. So.
Thank you.
Delighted to be here.
Thank you, and I think you're quite right. The market is there now.
Yeah.
We definitely see that in our city as well. Rich, can I ask you to add your thoughts, please?
Yeah, I agree. This is probably the most exciting time I've seen in my career so far. Been working on this a long time, been in hybrid technology back in the early trucking days, and we're able to experiment with some early battery technology, and now to see real deployments in the marketplace in North America, it's been extremely exciting to see where the technology is going. And I think, that it's going to keep on getting better. We have a long way to go on where we get in the industry, especially on the public sector and on final mile, middle mile, more on the commercial applications. The technology is going to keep on advancing as far as battery technology and range and visibility, access, and control products that we can use to really refine this and ultimately get a better, customer experience out of this product and get to a place where you can have a total cost of ownership that makes sense long term for these products to go into applications to serve their clients. So that's the ultimate goal, is to deliver a lower cost transportation solution. And that's where we all want to get to.
That's great. Thank you. And David, if I could ask you as well, on where you think we're at with the current state of technology in the electrification of public transportation ecosystems.
Absolutely. So I would say we're at a stage now where we're seeing large-scale deployment of electric buses being possible. And in fact, for us at Keolis, in the past 12 months, we've deployed 246 buses in the Netherlands, all electric, 138 in Bergen in Norway, and we've got further contracts in Sweden, in France, and Australia, where we're also doing large-scale electric bus introduction. So the technology is now at a point where you can deploy at scale. We're also seeing hydrogen, and a lot of our clients are interested in hydrogen. I know we're talking about electric buses today, but just making that point that seems to be ramping up as well. I agree with the perspective that scale is now going to drive, I think, further improvements in battery technology, drive down costs, drive down weight potentially, extend battery range. And with what's happening here in the US, I'm sure everybody will be aware of the infrastructure funding that's hopefully going to be signed into legislation very, very shortly. That, I think, will further incentivize manufacturers and suppliers to invest in R&D and improve the technology further. So I think it is an incredibly exciting time. As Rich is, actually, I'm at the AFTA conference down in Orlando, Florida right now, and out on the floor there, I don't think there's a diesel vehicle anywhere on the floor. Everything is electric. There are many, many suppliers and manufacturers here exhibiting and showing what they can do. So hugely exciting, but more to come, I think.
That's great, and I think you're quite right. We all have the eye on the new infrastructure bill, and we'll see how that rolls out and has an impact on manufacturing especially. As we explore technology and evolution of mobility electrification, how do you support key players and stakeholders in the transition to electrification? Electrification. For example, Rich, I know you're currently working with the City of Brampton, and I'm curious how a company like ChargePoint supports transit operators in this transition.
Sure. So, a number of different areas. It's specifically in Brampton with the Canadian Electric Bus Demonstration. What we did was we provided the data that was needed to be able to meet the data collection requirements for that rollout. So, with our recent acquisition of Vericity, which I did shortly after joining the company, it really opened up a whole other avenue of how we support our bus customers globally. So when you look at, what you have done in Brampton, with the 8 buses that got deployed and what's going on in New York and then out in TransLink, we were really the data provider to be able to show how those vehicles are going to perform on those routes, with the telematics on those vehicles and really be able to meet the objectives of that pilot. And really the goal to be able to support you as you roll more of those out across the country. So that on the software side, from telematics, visibility, access, control, we're agnostic when it comes to chargers, so we're happy to support ABB and Siemens up in Canada as we deploy different charger technologies across the network. We want to be able to work with everyone, so you have an ease of operation when you deploy equipment. And then on the hardware side, ChargePoint does offer its own hardware on the high power side, anything from low power 60 kilowatt equipment all the way up to 900 kW. So we're happy to support the hardware as they deploy across the country. We have one of the most comprehensive operations and maintenance networks in North America. We have probably one of the biggest call centers in Scottsdale, Arizona, that supports all of North America. We have over 150 people that do nothing but diagnose cases, breakdowns, technical troubleshooting, inoperability issue. And then we have testing facilities in North America and in Europe to be able to test all the new vehicles that come into the different applications. So we're thrilled to be able to support from a number of different ways.
That's great. Thank you. David, as many cities like Brampton continue to implement green strategies to support the electrification of public mobility, what would the role of cities, provinces, and states be in playing the evolution of this ecosystem, do you think?
So I'm actually going to go take a step back and talk a bit about the leadership and the policies that cities put in place. And, I think as we're coming out of COVID, as the importance of public transportation is ever more highlighted and more of a focus for all sorts of reasons, for equity, obviously for climate change. There's never been a time when leadership from cities, states, provinces has been more important. So I would really encourage the policymakers to think about what they want from their public transportation systems, how they can make the systems as attractive as possible, as accessible as possible, not just from a physical accessibility perspective, but reducing the barriers to travel right the way from the point where somebody thinks about making a journey and how they access information, how they buy the tickets for that journey, how the journey is as integrated as possible across all modes so they can make an end-to-end journey seamlessly, what the experience is like, and design the networks to really, really support that aspiration. And then, of course, as a number of cities are now doing, setting the policy that those networks will be operated by electric vehicles, or by hydrogen vehicles, but, a fossil-free environment as a policy. So I think that is really, really important, that leadership. Plus, of course, funding where it's available, helping the agencies and suppliers to access funding to create the reality of the vision that comes from that leadership. So I think that's the key role for city, states, and provinces in this.
Thank you. That's a great answer. Have you seen a city do this well around the world? You mentioned a few new clients that you've recently obtained. Is there a city doing this really well?
There's a few examples I'd like to give, actually. So I mentioned a few already. I mentioned Bergen in Norway, in the Netherlands, Sydney in Australia, where we just signed a new contract and we'll be introducing electric buses there as part of that. But one that I'd really want to highlight actually is Dijon in France. And forgive me, I know we're talking about electric infrastructure and electric buses, but it's in the same vein. What Dijon are doing, and by the way, we operate all of the modes of transportation in Dijon on behalf of the city. So the tram network, the bus network, the bicycles, the car parking, the ticketing arrangements, we manage all of that for Dijon. And what Dijon has committed to is to be completely carbon free, emissions free by 2030. And we're working with them on that commitment. And what they are doing is that they are going to convert all public service vehicles, buses, garbage trucks, the service vehicles that the city uses to hydrogen. We're helping them to build the hydrogen infrastructure. They're going to use the garbage they collect to help in hydrogen production, and they're building a 12-hectare photovoltaic site, again, to provide the energy for that hydrogen production. And so, it's a very, very bold vision, in line with what I was talking about, actually being bold and creating a compelling vision. But Dijon are really, really moving ahead with that endeavor, and we're very proud to support them with it.
Sounds incredible, actually. I'm sure my team is taking notes because I'm not sure I've heard about a garbage truck yet. But that's a really great example. Thank you for that. That was outstanding. So we've talked about Q-Trick a little bit already. We've mentioned it a couple of times, and Brampton is really proud of being part of the first of its kind electric bus demonstration and integration trial. It really is an unprecedented initiative that has brought multiple levels of government, bus charger manufacturers, systems integrators, academia, and funding partners together to implement electric buses in our city. This project is the largest single global deployment of standardized and fully interoperable battery electric buses and high-powered overhead en route charging systems. All of that speaks to collaboration, I think.
Absolutely.
Sankar, I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on the benefits of collaboration in all of this, and like Q-Trick, for example, and how these types of partnerships can really benefit the evolution of this ecosystem.
It's so important. We've been pushing electrification of transportation for the last 20, 25 years. And we worked with major OEMs, like we worked with Chrysler, and we worked with, today our main partner is the Toyota Group. Mm-hmm. But without, the problem or the challenge is bigger than companies. So you need that whole policy side, you need infrastructure, you need the deliveries of good quality batteries and good quality trucks and buses. So I think that's the ecosystem which is very needed. And what my small worry is, because I'm again a technology guy, is just now a tsunami has come in of the market side. I don't want any missteps happening. And that, especially in the bus side, is, you got to watch it. We all have to watch it, not. And just in the last 1 year, there was 2 major OEMs who launched some electric cars, and they pulled back. They're spending over 1.9 billion, one company, etc. We do not want any accidents in the public transportation, because then it becomes like that old Hindenburg, one bad accident, and then the whole industry is pushed back for 10, 15 years. So we've all have to be, once cautiously and optimistically move forward.
And in collaboration with each other.
And very much so in collaboration. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I wanted to ask each of you your thoughts on what's next in the evolution of the ecosystem. What's the next phase of the technology, and what we see in terms of the evolution of electrification? Rich, can I ask you to start with that, please?
Sure. So I think, first and foremost, I agree that the industry does not need a setback right now. And I think I don't think we're going to get one on the commercial side. I think some feedback is, in 25 years of doing this in transportation, I've never seen the public, private, and business sector work so closely together on early successes in this product. So it's really reassuring to see how close the business community and the public sector and the private sector are working together. And it seems like we're really all rowing in the same direction around what this looks like. So as we roll forward, I think where you're going to see a lot more success is companies working together to successfully deploy more and more electric vehicles in applications where they make sense. And I think that's going to come in a number of places. I think that the OEMs are very interested in making sure that their product is successful in the application that's used. I think the integrators like us and that also do hardware and software want to be able to share data as much as possible so we get the right results of the vehicles that go into different applications. And really what it's all about is really lowering the total cost of transportation. So when you look at the cost of moving goods, services, and people, at the end of the day, that's got to be the overall benefit on this. And I think that's where we're getting to.
And I wouldn't be an economic developer if I didn't ask you what was next for your business in terms of what you see next as a next stage of growth or even operations.
Yes, definitely on the fleet side of the business. This is what I was brought in here to do at ChargePoint. We know it's going to be one of the fastest growing segments in North America and globally, frankly. So when we look at developing fleet products for commercial applications, that is where this is going. And this is where our investment dollars are going. This is where our acquisitions are focused on. And this is where we're going to grow our market share over the next couple of years. This is a top priority for us. Our core business around supporting consumers, around on-route charging, and what we can do in the wild to support our automotive drivers, we're going to remain focused on that. But we are putting a big team behind this, and we know this is important in North America and globally.
Great, thank you. And David, can I ask you the same question in terms of the evolution of the industry, where you see it going? What's next?
Absolutely. And well, I'll start by going back to the point I made earlier about leadership and policy, and I really hope that the movement that's there to create better transit systems continues, and that more and more agencies, cities, provinces embrace that and really create that bold vision. In terms of evolution, though, of the technology at the moment, I think we spoke about it a little earlier. Battery evolution. Here at the trade show, I've really enjoyed speaking to the various manufacturers and suppliers to the industry, and they're all talking about battery evolution, confidence in the future, and investing in R&D as a major focus, in scaling up production and reducing unit costs as a result of that. So, talking to one manufacturer today that I won't name, they're talking about opening a new facility and an extra manufacturing facility in the next 12 months in anticipation of the increased demand. Charging systems, Rich has spoken a bit about charging systems, perhaps better standardization of those systems, better integration with those systems with the vehicles and the software that's related to those systems, and improved optimization tools so that we can get more out of the vehicles while we're using them. So I think that all of those things are in the pipeline and will really help to make the system even more efficient, more affordable, and more effective going forward. And there's also a movement now, talking to one other potential supplier earlier today. A supplier approached me about converting existing diesel locomotives into battery electric locomotives. So, repurposing assets that we already have and converting them to a more efficient, fossil-free mode of energy. So there's a huge amount going on in this area, and I think it's got a huge level of pace already, but that pace is going to continue to grow in the months and years ahead.
Thank you. And Sankar, what are your thoughts in terms of the future?
The future is the growth in technology. What we are seeing, the battery evolution is still happening. So you cannot. So one of the things which had happened in the U.S. was a lot of people, this is a few years ago, built a lot of big battery plants, and these are all multinationals, and they all became stranded assets. So the plants came in, and they had problems with it for whatever reason, whether it's a safety, longevity, etc. And so there's $1 billion stranded assets all over the place. So which is why you see not that many North American or even European battery makers. The technology is moving, and I think it's moving well for safety, longevity, because the bus folks want batteries which will last 12 years, maybe 14 years. We've got now data with our fleet running in Brampton. Actually, Mondelez is running in Brampton. Walmart is sort of Mississauga, Brampton. We got a few hundred trucks running, and we are seeing that the battery can last. And the next generation technology is coming and evolving, both on the solid-state batteries as well as on the standard batteries. So I think this is all good. So really, we are keeping our fingers crossed that somebody doesn't do anything too overambitious and run into this Hindenburg kind of problems, and let it evolve nicely.
What do you think are the environmental concerns? Do you think, you mentioned battery manufacturing, that was quite a topic in economic development for some time. Yeah. We've seen a lot of RFPs out there. There doesn't seem to be a lot of conversation about the environmental impact of batteries.
There was an environmental impact with the lead acid batteries, because lead was had some environmental problems. The lithium batteries, strangely, do not have too much heavy metals or something, and a battery will last, let's say, 10 years, 15 years, and then it gets repurposed into the energy storage system. We did a lot of work with Manitoba Hydro on that. So I think that recycling for lead acid, which had to be done every 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, here you're looking at a 15, 20-year gap. So I think the environmental footprint is much less. And then with these lithium batteries. And I joke, lithium is not bad for you. I put a little bit in the coffee of my wife in the morning, so she's very calm.
Oh, geez. Oh, geez.
Or she puts it in my coffee, and I'm super calm again.
You're a very calm man. I've come to get to know you that way. Yeah. Rich, this is a focus about economies, and certainly my focus in terms of economic development. If you were going to advise and recommend cities on how to attract manufacturing or how to attract companies in this space, where would you suggest that we focus?
So certainly innovation. I'm a little biased, but certainly innovation in transportation. I worked up in Canada for a number of years, and the innovation that I saw coming out of the transportation sector, specifically in the GTA area, was unbelievable. So, I saw businesses being pulled into that area that normally wouldn't have gone there. So the investments that the community makes in, innovation parks and in projects like this really spurs an enormous amount of innovation and companies that come up and participate in that market, which is ultimately what any area wants. From an economic development standpoint, it really brings skilled labor. It really fuels the colleges in that area and universities. And it really does a great job with that throughout the marketplace. So that's where we see a ton of innovation right now.
Thank you. David, you've worked around the world. Where do you see the greatest economic impact?
Wow. Well, I think, what we've seen from public transportation generally is the economic benefits of evolving the systems, of growing ridership, of enabling mobility. And in Europe, we've seen some real benefits as a result of that. So, particularly in the UK with the pre-COVID, the growth in public transportation there was just extraordinary. I think we're going to see that here in North America too, with the funding that we've already mentioned, with the new ambition to overhaul the transportation networks. I think the tangential benefits that we're going to see as a result of that are going to be enormous. And we've got to have the confidence, I think, to move forward and expect that those benefits will be created.
Claire, just expanding on that, yes, it's a new wave, new technology, but sometimes it's replacing the whole diesel gasoline industry. We used to run Germany's largest lithium-ion battery plant. And if you look at, we worked with Daimler, but Volkswagen, etc., the number of jobs which will get lost because battery electric doesn't need maintenance, it's much more, electric motor doesn't need that much people working on it. And so there will be a bit of a seismic shift in the job creation as well. So it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Yeah, and a role for government and post-secondary and skills to retrain people from the industry.
It is, but the new industry doesn't need so many people. Because I'm driving a little, that Daimler car. I've been driving it for 6-7 years, and I've not been to a dealer in once.
Wow.
So electric cars means your gas stations disappear, your dealer network disappear, your maintenance people disappear, and the auto companies are losing tens of thousands of people because they are not going to make those complicated internal combustion engine. So policymakers have to figure out how to handle that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Sankar, while you're speaking now, early adoption in electric vehicles, electric transportation, public transportation, does it make sense now for cities to start getting into it now?
Oh, I think so, very much so. Very, very much so. We have been pushing this climate change agenda for 25 years. We should have moved on it, long time back. And it just didn't happen. So it is absolutely imperative that cities move as quickly as possible.
And Rich, I'll ask you the same question. Does it make sense for cities and transit systems to get into this now?
Yeah, I don't think it's too early at this point. I think we're right at the beginning right now. So I've met with a ton of public agencies this week between Monday today and have a bunch scheduled tomorrow. And everyone's looking at where does this fit into the way they serve their community. So I think there are certain applications that this certainly makes sense right now to adopt early. And there's plenty of support available from the OEM to the infrastructure side, to the utilities, to the software. There's no shortage of help in this marketplace right now. Now's the right time to deploy pilots and do what you guys are doing right now. I think that this is a perfect application and a perfect deployment to test what this looks like now. And then it gives you a base case on how to deploy. And knowing that the technology is going to continue to get better and range is going to continue to get better and new types of OEM combustion is going to come out that'll be zero emission. And how does that work in the different types of applications that you're going to have? So I think that now is the time. We're in the very early stage of this, and now we're beyond a minimum viable product. We're into production now. So now is the time to do it.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And do you have another city that you would give as an example of a success story, like with Dijon and certainly where Brampton is at now?
Yeah, I think that, to stay in North America, one of the biggest ones right now is the city of New York. that's over 1,000 charging stations across the city and it's all behind the fence. So it's for them to use, whether they're running garbage trucks on it now, they're running light utility vehicles on it now, automobiles on it now, police cars on it now. And we share an enormous amount of information with them, from the manufacturer side on what type of inoperability testing we're doing on vehicles to give them the confidence to be able to launch those vehicles. So I think that's one of the best examples for like a mixed use case. That's port, that's transit, that's public service. That's a combination of vehicles that it's truly impressive to see how many different types of vehicles that they've deployed throughout New York.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's true. It's the combination and it's mixing it together rather than just being. So do you have an example of this as well, Sankar, that you've seen?
We are seeing movement happening, but I'll tell you what's great for the cities is you're going to save money.
Yes.
You will save a ton of money. So do go electric. And you're going to save money everywhere.
And I think
provide better services to the citizens.
And I think that it's the financing that's been in the back of my mind, especially as cities come out of COVID. Yeah. Especially as cities have put so much into COVID response. We still don't know the impact of that on a lot of the budgets, and not Brampton, but around the world. So this is a pretty huge financial commitment from cities, I would assume.
Again, I'm told banks are all there. Huge amounts of money are there. And lease things if you don't need to buy it. Lease it because your operating cost for an electric transportation is way cheaper, and lease it. There's no gasoline cost, there's no maintenance. So if you don't have the funds, lease works.
And David, would you have the same advice for cities right now in terms of the financial aspect of all of this?
I would, I know that we're saying that we're at the start of this, but actually some of our clients have been operating first generation electric vehicles for about 7 or 8 years now. So, the technology has come such a long way, even in that period. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we are at a point where you can deploy at scale now. I saw some data, and I can't recall the exact numbers to be perfectly transparent, but I saw some data very, very recently that said now for the first time, the whole life cost of an electric bus is better than the same cost for a diesel bus. So we've just tipped that scale. And I think that that disparity, that divide will continue to grow when all of the things that we've been talking about, costs coming down, efficiency improving and so on, as electric technology continues to evolve.
Just on that point, Electrify and Toyota have on these commercial vehicles. If you go to their website, depending on how many hours you're using, etc., the return on investment is few months.
Wow.
To move away from diesel to electric. Yeah. You save so much funds.
Rich, do you want to make a comment on the topic of the financial aspect of all this?
Yeah, I think depending on the segment, you really need to look at what your own TCO is on that equipment and how you deploy it. I think in the transport side, the industry has gotten very good on measuring what their total cost of ownership is, and that's acquisition to operation to disposal. When you look at that life cycle of the vehicle, every business is a little bit different on how they look at their financial model and what they're trying to do with that vehicle and what the total cost of that vehicle is going to be. And typically in the transit, they're going to run that vehicle to destruction towards the end of its usable life. But in other applications in commercial transportation, they traditionally have been looking at some type of residual on that vehicle because they upgrade every couple of years. So, one of the things that we help do is help model what that TCO looks like and give the inputs that are realistic from an infrastructure and an energy standpoint. And then you really need to look at, what the total cost of maintenance is to operate that vehicle and then what your replacement cost of that vehicle is. So I think every application is a little different. We're extremely careful on the data that we give to our customers because we know they're making big decisions when it comes to deploying electric vehicles. And again, we want them to be successful. So we're as forthcoming as we can possibly be with giving information on how that vehicle is going to operate and what your energy cost is. And really, ChargePoint's job is to develop applications that deliver fuel to that vehicle effectively based on the application that it's going to be used in. So we really focused on delivering fuel at the right time to that vehicle at the right rate in the right application so that vehicle can do its job. And that's a big part of the TCO, but it's not the entire thing. So we're always willing to work with customers on that so they make the right decision.
Yeah, that's great. David, I'm going to ask you what I hope is not a difficult question. You gave us a great example of cities that are doing this well. You don't have to name the city that didn't do this well, but I'd love to hear about city XYZ perhaps that did not do this well, did not integrate this well into their existing fleet or did not finance this well. I think it's really important to learn from other people's mistakes, if I can put it that way.
I genuinely don't have an example that I would highlight, and I'm not dodging the question, by the way. I think what I rue a little is where we've worked with some of our cities, and I won't name any names, and they've not been bold enough to make the right decision. I think there's been, whether it's politics, whether it's indecision in leadership, not being able to kind of get off the fence. And I think some cities have missed opportunities as a result of that. So, as I say, I don't have an example where it went horribly wrong. There are some teething problems sometimes, of course, but we work through those. So there haven't been any, operational or, significant issues as a result of these sorts of implementations. But I think not being able to make the decision has been something that I've seen and I think is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, that's great.
I think if I could jump in, I think one of the failure points that I see a lot across North America is not when the organization doesn't understand who the stakeholder is in deploying this technology. So when you don't give that fleet manager the tools for him or her to do the job, when you don't understand who the customer is that you're trying to serve, and you don't gain the visibility so you can measure against the success rate. Those are some of the early things that we see in early deployments where certain organizations really struggle, so that their local people don't understand how to use the technology or how to deploy it effectively. So they get frustrated because they have another full-time job that they're doing in addition to deploying electric. And then they don't focus on who their customer is. So they don't know how to measure what real success is. And I think to David's point, it ends up working itself out with a lot of help from a lot of outside people. But when we see, 1 and 2 and 3 unit deployments, that generally the speed bumps that we run into that lend the project to not be successful early. And we want them to be successful early. So that's generally the thing that I focus on most with the customers when they deploy is do they have the right support in place for their staff to do this?
Have you experienced clients with talent shortages, as you were talking about, or skill set issues? Have you experienced a city that has worked with a college or a community college program or university program where they are able to train that talent, or is that something that they use your business for?
Oh, no, for sure. I've seen, I sit on the board of COBWorks, which is the federal works organization, and the training that they're putting in at the technical universities and technical college, they've pivoted really fast to be able to do, electric service on vehicles, electrical mitigation, to be able to install and support around these emerging industries in North America. And I'm seeing it in Europe too, that training and development at the, technical college level has picked up faster than I've ever seen before. And they're doing a great job pushing people through those programs, and the jobs are in extremely high demand. So, I think there's a little bit of cross training between, a technician that used to work on internal combustion vehicles and now transferring over to electric vehicles. And you're seeing we're going to have mixed fleets for a long time. So you're going to need both those disciplines for a very, very long time. So, how do you train your mobile maintenance technicians to be able to service EV vehicles and internal combustion vehicles? As they're coming out of the same service truck, how do you teach energy mitigation? And certainly, how do you look at electrifying your shops? It's a little bit of a different upfit when you look at your facilities on how you service those vehicles. So all those factors come into play from a technical and training standpoint.
Yeah, thank you. And I was just looking at your bio. I think it's you're the chair of Workforce Georgia. Is that some of the things that you're looking at with that?
Yeah, working with the technical colleges across all the workforce. So it's been a great experience to watch them develop.
That's a great idea. I can't see my team, but we should look into that, because I think that's really important to ensure that we have the talent of the future. And I know that Brampton is looking at building a new facility for electric buses, for charging, for maintenance and everything. So this is a bit about what you were talking about in terms of a sector that, for lack of any other words, could die. But here's one where we're thinking it could grow.
It is. I mean, that's what it's more the automotive industry, the OEMs are having this problem, is that they've got, let's say, 100,000 people working in making internal combustion engines and so on. They don't need so many. So they're now the electric motors, etc. So you need much less. In our trucks, which are now running in a few hundred running in the Brampton, Mississauga area, and of course, few thousand in the US, what we are finding is the maintenance requirements is very low. So now, if it's a mixed fleet, you need both kinds of people, then you need a lot. So it will evolve. Yeah. And just like, in the olden days, people were worried that computers will come and we'll all be doing something else, washing dishes. But that's not true. and so, yes, look at the self-driven trucks are coming. What will happen? I think people evolve.
The threat of automation.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
We're seeing so much. Our batteries going into the they call them automated, automatically guided vehicles, or robots or whatever. So that's happening. And that's part of the technology evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Creation and some destruction.
Yes. And seen that through history.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. We have a few minutes left, and I wanted to provide all of you an opportunity to speak about your businesses and not your elevator pitch, But certainly talk maybe, David, about your business and where it's at today in terms of coming out of COVID, the impact it had on your businesses and where you see the future of your business right now.
So, yeah, I mean, we're in public transportation. So in pretty much every territory that we're in, COVID has had an impact on ridership. It's had an impact on our workforce. You know, many of our employees are, frontline employees out there and have been there through the pandemic, coming to work every day to provide transportation for essential workers and others. As we're coming out of it, we are seeing ridership recover. It does vary according to the territory that we're in. So in France, for example, very, very strong recovery of ridership. Here in North America, a more modest recovery, but still a recovery. And so, you know, we're optimistic about the future, but of course, watchful over the COVID situation and any potential reversal in fortunes there. Just on energy transition, you know, this is a huge, huge focus for us as a business. I spoke about, you know, we already operate 1,000 electric buses. We've created our own center of excellence for energy transition. And in fact, next week in Keolis is Energy Transition Week. That is absolutely true. I didn't just make that up. And as part of the events that we're going to be doing next week, our center of excellence is going to be connecting all of our client base to share experiences on energy transition, where they are right now, and to create, you know, some opportunities for learning from each other. So that and a number of other events are running next week. But energy transition is a huge, huge focus for us going forward.
That's exciting. I'll look out for that next week. Rich, can you share a little bit about the impact of COVID that had on your business or your clients?
Yeah, from the perspective of charging and infrastructure, certainly supply chain, you know, is a friction when, you know, we're in the hardware business. So when you look at our supply chain, you know, globally, it gets constrained. I think our teams have done an unbelievable job being able to counteract that with, you know, all the work that they've done around raw materials and, you know, how we're assembling chargers and the support that we brought in, you know, all across the world. But also on a human capital standpoint, you know, we have a ton of engineers and they're in extremely high demand across the world right now. So retaining talent and, you know, that was a major focus of ChargePoint. And when you look at the acquisitions that we've done, over the last 6 months, we're continuing to bring engineers into our company that help us build our solutions that allow us to scale. So I think, you know, partially human capital, you have to really pay attention to how you're helping your employees be successful during these times. And then how do you bring them back to work in an environment that's going to retain them? Those are two huge focus items of the company. And then around supply chain is how do we continue to manage the supply chain as effectively as possible so we can serve our product to our customers. I mean, those are the two big things that really have helped us through the pandemic be successful. And really those muscles that we've developed are going to help to continue us grow as we recover out of this.
We heard a lot about remote workforces in the U.S., which became much more of a talent attraction piece for economic developers. Did your business use a remote workforce? Will you continue to? And did you find that was a lot of competition for talent?
No, I think I think what we found is that, you know, we were a global company before COVID and we came out as a bigger global company afterwards. You know, I think we have more offices now than we did before COVID, and more flexible workspace and, you know, more options for employees on how they return to work globally. And I think that, you know, our CEO, Pat, has done just an unbelievable job working with our employees on making sure that they have the tools to be successful. So, you know, I think a blend of this is going to exist, you know, probably forever, right? We've made the transition over the last couple of years. I think companies have found that there's definitely a hybrid approach to working at home versus working in an office, and people have really adapted to becoming much more flexible. But with that comes a lot of stress. So you have to help employees manage that, manage their workload, and manage the hours that they're working. And our leadership here has just done a great job with that. I'm really proud to be a part of this organization.
That's great. That's great to hear. Thank you for that. We've come to the end of our time. Thank you virtually, David and Rich. Nice to see both of you. And Sankar, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah. We had a great conversation. I appreciate all of your engagement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.